I was brought up in a denomination that emphasized fear and guilt more than grace and love. But in my 40s, I experienced an act of generosity that changed my life. I was a nurse working in a psychiatric unit, and also working there was a music therapist. She was married to a Lutheran pastor. We had a work party that was at one of the nurses' houses. And everybody started saying, "Come on, Vera, tell your jokes, tell your jokes." And I knew a line that long of not very nice jokes. And I said, no, the pastor's here. And they said, no, he's not, he's way over there. Well, I looked, and sure enough, he and his wife Brenda were playing ping pong. And we were way on the other side. So I started telling the jokes. Everybody was laughing until they weren't laughing anymore. And I knew what had happened. Sure enough, I turned around and looked, and there stands Brenda and her Lutheran husband. Well, I got so nervous and so upset that I stopped in the middle of the joke, picked up my purse, ran to my car, and drove on home. And the next day, the phone rings about 10:30 in the morning. So I picked up the phone, not having any idea who was on the phone, least of all that it would be Pastor Greg. Well, he said, "Good morning, Vera. This is Pastor Greg." Oh, my Lord. I started talking 90 miles an hour, stumbling over myself, just anything. And when I took a breath, he asked me, he said, "I just called to ask you," said, "you left before you gave us a punchline last night." Well, then I still was stumbling. And so anyway, I think I told him the punchline, and we hung up. I just sat down in the floor, and I cried and I cried, because for the first time, someone had shared with me God's gracious love and acceptance. And needless to say, you know where I was the next Sunday. And that has stayed with me all these years and helped me to be a more generous person with my attitude of accepting people where they are.
If I think back to the earliest point in time that I can recall, I think I would have to say my parents were my earliest models of generosity. And the particular instance I can remember, and this may sound kind of strange, but we used to get these little church envelopes that had two sides to them. They were glued down the middle, and I think one side said something like benevolence, and the other one was probably the general fund. I remember I was very small and didn't have any clue what the word benevolence meant. And I remember I got an allowance of 25 cents each week. And so I put about 5 cents into there. So I asked my mother, well, how should I do this? And she said, well, it's however you want to. And I said, well, if I want to split it 50-50, and I can't split a half a cent. And she said, well, why don't you put 2 in one side and 3 in the other, and the following week you can put 3 in one side and 2 in the other. And I said, oh, okay. So that's kind of what I would say that was my earliest remembrance.
The most important one was my father. He was an extremely generous man throughout his life. He spent a lot of time helping neighbors and friends, particularly widows that had lost their husbands, and he would check their houses and do a lot of little jobs in their houses that they needed help with.
My generosity, I guess, and our generosity as a family has just changed over time because we see where the gifts go, but not only that it is central to who we are as Christian people. As I co-chaired our capital campaign and saw people who stepped out totally in faith, who would pass a sealed envelope to me and say, I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but I trust God will work through me and we'll make it work. It caused me to reevaluate who I was as a Christian, what generosity really meant, and the fact that we're giving to God and letting God decide how things are going to work through the Holy Spirit through us.
We had an old Greek storekeeper that was very generous to me and my brother and sister. And I would say he was one of the earlier models in my life. He helped us to get through the short periods and never pushed us to return what we had borrowed from him. We were having to work to support my brother and sister and my mother. And close to the end of the week, near payday, when food was short, and he would supply us with stuff that we needed, and then we could repay him at the payday. So that was the first generosity that I can recall.
I would say that giving is transformative. Generosity is transformative. And when you couch it within a sense of faith, it will forever change your life and the lives of other people.
Sometimes you have to do that intentionally. You have to share your story and let people know how you've come to do the things that you do. Otherwise, they may not pick up on it or may not get the full, advantage of it.
What I would say to people to encourage them with their generosity would be, take a look at what the Lord has done during the continuum of your life. But during this continuum, if we can learn that even during survival and struggle, to be generous with our gifts, that's a kind of an attitude of the heart that will follow you throughout your life.
I would say to other people that you need to think about what it is you've received, and when you give it out as a gift or a loan, that you're going to be getting it back from God probably more than you expect. Generosity in my life has been very easily, because it seems like every time I give something away, I get twice as much back.
To help others be more generous, you really need to be a model. You need to talk about it. You need to let other people know where you're being generous and why you're being generous. And I think you have to be willing to ask. People are not always willing of their own accord to be generous. I think generosity is caught, not taught.
Put God at the center of what you do. And if you put God at the center of what you do, your life will be filled up.
To me, it comes in two different ways. One is the faith to be vulnerable, to open up to people and to assist them and to help them, to listen to them. And then also you have to have faith to be vulnerable, to kind of put your finances out there, to give away some of your assets and still have the faith that God's going to take care of you.
I have looked at, through Bible studies and a current study through the Psalms, how it may encourage a man like myself, who may be a little more quiet or introverted, to be expressive and to be thankful to the Lord, communicate with Him, and then take that and perhaps, as an extension, talk to people who really mean a lot to you, and maybe write a note of appreciation to what they mean to me. And by extension, I feel I can take that generosity towards people I love and care about, and perhaps do a better job of being the hands and feet of Christ and be attentive to other people's needs.
I think generosity is grown into in that you discover along life's journey regrets that you didn't give a gift, or you didn't give more of a gift, and you deal with the I should have, I could have, I would have, and recognize that those didn't count for anything. That to give the gift would have been the right thing to do. And so you can make up for that, and that enables you to be more generous at a different time and place.
There's no telling when the Holy Spirit is going to work through us. But, taking the time to be, just to sit with somebody and to give of yourself and give of your heart is as much generosity as anything that anybody could give.
God was so generous to us in giving us his son to die for us, that anything I can do that's generous, that's helpful to others, is pleasing to God. And that's what I want to be.